Nosotros venceremos. We will win. This was a statement by Cesar Chavez, an outcry for the national farm worker rights in the Delano Grape strike. Over 100 years after the end of slavery, Hispanic and Filipino farm workers in Southern California faced conditions that mirrored that of slaves. In a bold step on September 9, 1965, Filipino farm workers, or manongs, laid down their grapes on Delano grape fields and went on a strike because of their conditions. Their conditions were recognized as harsh by organizers like Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and Larry Itliong, who led their efforts and expanded the strike into a boycott for civil rights, with over 17 million Americans in protest by 1970. The over half-a-decade strike turned the tide for farm workers across the United States and Filipino and Hispanic Americans seeking recognized rights within their work and their country. The Delano Grape strike became a turning point for migrant civil rights and introduced a wave of protests that would revolutionize the farm working industry. By the late 1920s, 75% of farm workers in California were Hispanic and Filipino. Racism persisted throughout this time, driving saturation of American fields, and locking migrant generations in toil and poverty. Receiving slave wages well under minimum wage, often 70 cents per hour, grape workers lived in labor camps owned by the growers, often living in sheds and their children going malnutritious and uneducated.
All summer long, keep the richest agricultural state in the country afloat. And then after summer's gone, they're asked to leave these camps and to move on. The whole system kind of encourages migrant life of the farm worker.
And so the Filipino Delano Grape strike began on September 9, 1965. Enter Cesar Chavez, a migrant worker from Arizona who experienced the Californian fields, called to action the National Farm Workers Association, along with Dolores Huerta, to carry out the Hispanic strike. The Hispanic strike was forming alongside the Filipino Delano strike, only 8 days after the Filipino workers laid down their grapes. They were led by Larry Itliong as the leader of Agriculture Workers Organizing Committee, and persisted Cesar Chavez to join the two strikes together to form the United Farm Workers.
As we were doing the community organizing, then we saw that the most poverty-stricken people were the farm workers, and that they had all of this discrimination against them. So, the idea came out, well, wait a minute, we need to do something about farm workers, and what is the solution for that? And of course, the union is a solution.
The UFW demanded higher pay and protection for workers, for Filipino and Hispanics to be recognized as American citizens and have civil rights. These efforts would revolutionize these rights for migrants. Strikers marched from Delano to Sacramento, California's capital, to meet these demands. Strikers could be found singing and chanting, picking up more workers in grape fields along their trek mapped out by Chavez.
Look, there's music, there's people out there, and they know we're coming. And they were playing music, and that lifted us a lot. That helped us a lot. They gave us más ánimo to march more.
Really tremendous to keep the people walking along. There was this feeling of solidarity, We have a right to be here.
This 300-mile march from Delano to Sacramento had over 10,000 supporters waiting for them in the capital. This effort led to more popularization of the boycott. Shortly, within the state, boycotts on grapes skyrocketed, with some Los Angeles cargo freights refusing to ship grapes, leaving them to rot in ports. Boycotts around the United States ballooned to a participation of over 17 million Americans. Chavez and Huerta continued their influence while the strike continued. After 5 years, grape growers officially signed labor contracts with the Union of Farm Workers, and the strike on grapes was concluded. This brought higher pay for over 40 cents, more protection for rights for workers, and health benefits. The signature assured Filipinos and Hispanics a place in the workforce, protected under the law and their land in America. It identified the Filipinos and Hispanics as working citizens of the United States, as well as people. The Delano Grape strike became a huge turning point for Filipinos and Hispanics. It identified them as working citizens of the United States, as well as people. The Delano Grape strike revolutionized the way Filipinos and Hispanics were recognized in America, and a turning point for their civil rights being shaped by their effort. Huerta and Chavez's work still remains today, supporting farm workers across the United States through charity and farming rights and resources. The 20-worker strike on September 9, 1965 is a mark of one of the greatest civil rights social justice movements according to Chavez. What started out as a small strike has proved to be a pioneering event, or a turning point in history for Hispanic and Filipino immigrants. It is also a turning point for farm workers and Americans alike, who can all relate to the matters of social justice and civil rights. They claimed their rights for themselves in this moment, but they also claim their rights for future generations and for all of America, that they can be secured underneath the law.